Okay, folks, so Wednesday already, nearly half the week done. So on the left, you've got a reminder of everything that we've covered. So context, the prologue. Remember, the prologue is written as a sonnet, a 14-line poem, 14-line section, because sonnets were the traditional form of love poetry at the time. We looked at Act 1, Scene 1, that action-packed start, and Shakespeare presenting those two main themes of conflict and love. We then moved on to Act 1, Scene 2, where Paris was asking for Juliet's hand in marriage, but Capulet thinks that she's too young. He wants 2 summers to wither before his daughter commits to becoming a wife. And then we learn about the party and that there's going to be lots of dancing. So in yesterday's lesson you wrote me a paragraph about how Shakespeare presents Capulet. Can you please make sure, if you haven't already done so, that that paragraph is coming my way today? Crucial plot moment: the servant can't read the list of guests that he's given. He bumps into Romeo, who can read, so Romeo learns that Rosaline's going to be at the party, and then we had that lovely bird imagery from that Shakespeare gives to Benvolio about I will make thee think thy swan a crow. Okay, let's find out what we're doing today. Right, Act 1, Scene 3. So in this scene, we are introduced to the 3 main female characters of the play, all of whom are from the house of Capulet. So, image 1 is Lady Capulet, image 2 is the nurse, and image 3 is Juliet. Okay, I'm going to go through just a brief outline of each character. In your pink books, if you can write the title, Act 1, Scene 3, and then bullet point the information that I'm about to give you for each of those characters. That would be a really good starting point. So, put today's date, the title, Act 1, Scene 3. Pause me and come back to me when you're ready. So as I go through this information, stop and start me, pause me, make yourself a cup of tea, eat that chocolate hobnob, whatever works best for you. So let's get a good idea of the basics of the character of Lady Capulet then. So if you remember, women at the time of Shakespeare writing, women were married and mothers at a very early age. In this scene, we're about to find out that Juliet's mother was married and already a mother by the time that she was Juliet's age. So she, so she expects Juliet to follow the same pattern. It's what she did, it's what was expected of her, and so that's what she expects of Juliet. That's what society expected of women at that time. When Capulet was talking to Paris in the last scene, there was some suggestion, if you've done your notes properly, you'll remember this, that Capulet's marriage perhaps wasn't the happiest of marriages, because he suggests that if women are married and become mothers too early, that they actually become marred, they become spoilt, because perhaps, I don't know, they haven't been allowed enough time to grow or to become the person that they are. So there's the suggestion that Lady Capulet's marriage is not a happy one. You'll remember, hopefully, from your context work, that a wife belonged to her husband. She was not seen as an individual, she was seen as being owned. As such, she had no rights, she was not allowed to own any property, and pretty much her role in life was first to obey her father before she became married, and then to obey her husband once she was married. So not a lot of control in women's lives at this time. Mothers of the social level of the Capulet and the Montague families, they didn't really have a lot to do with bringing their children up. Obviously, they gave birth to them, but after that, the job of looking after a baby, a toddler, a young child, and then nurturing and protecting a child as they get older, that was not the job of the mother. A mother in Lady Capulet's position wouldn't even have breastfed her own child. What happened in society at that time was that the wealthy family would employ what we call a wet nurse. And that wet nurse was a woman who had just finished breastfeeding her own child, so she was still able to breastfeed, or perhaps her child had died very recently, and so she was paid to feed the child, the baby of the wealthy family. So the picture in the middle then is of the woman who was employed as Juliet's wet nurse. Her title in the play is The Nurse, very exciting and imaginative, and she is a servant of the Capulets. So she is of a much lower level of society. She is paid by the Capulets to be Juliet's friend, her companion, look after her, make sure she's okay. Because she was Juliet's wet nurse and has stayed employed all this time, she's very close to Juliet, very close to Juliet. And at the start of the play, there is great fondness between the two of them. She knows Juliet an awful lot more, much better than Juliet's mother does. And so when you watch plays and see films, there is a much closer relationship between the two of them. One thing that does make the nurse stand out among these three women is that she has a very rude sense of humour. So she uses lots of rude jokes and rude puns, and Shakespeare did this to make sure that there was a nice amount of humour in the play. It is a tragedy, it's full of death and sorrow and sadness, but he does provide the audience and the reader with moments of light relief where we are supposed to find the play, the acting, humorous. Okay, so that's the nurse, and then the final image is of Juliet herself, looking very young, looking very anxious, looking quite innocent, not sure what's going on in the world. Remember, she wouldn't have been allowed outside of the house as of yet. She would have had to have an adult, a chaperone with her to make sure that she behaved herself and that she was respected by other people. So in the scene that we are about to read, the main things to notice about Juliet are the fact that she says very little, okay? And that although she shows respect for her mother, she doesn't show her any love at all. Okay, on to the next screen. Okay, so here we go with scene 3, introducing us to these three female characters. I'm going to try it a bit differently today, so I'm going to read through the text and I'm going to make a few comments as I go along, and then the more complicated quotes I'm going to do as quote explosions after we've read through this scene. Okay, we'll see how it goes today. See which one you prefer and you can all let me know. I have missed out a large chunk of the nurse speaking in this. One of Shakespeare's ideas, and the way that he makes her funny when you actually watch this as a play, is the fact that she's a real rambler. She goes on and on, mentioning this, mentioning that, mentioning the other. So you will notice as I read through it that I have missed out this huge chunk, massive speech of the nurse. Okay, I'll warn you when we get there so that you can then skip it, and I'll give you time to find where I then start again. Okay, here we go. So enter Lady Capulet and the nurse. Nurse, there's my daughter. Call her forth to me. Now, by my maidenhead, at 12-year-old, I bade her come. What, lamb? What, ladybird? God forbid. Where's this girl? What, Juliet? Right, just pause me and write a comment there for the what lamb, what ladybird, about how the fact that the nurse uses these very loving pet names for Juliet. And through those pet names, lamb and ladybird, Shakespeare makes it clear right from the start, so the very first time that we hear the nurse speak, how affectionate her love is for Juliet. She truly values her and cherishes her, and sees her really as the daughter in her life. The nurse was able to breastfeed Juliet because her own baby Susan died. Susan died, so the nurse breastfed Juliet on her mother's behalf. So just some small note there about how through those nouns, lamb and ladybird, we get an immediate impression of how close the nurse is to Juliet. Okay, pause me, write that, start me off again. How now? Who calls? Your mother. Madam, I am here. What is your will? This is the matter. Nurse, give leave a while. We must talk in secret. Oh, no, nurse, come back again. I have remembered me, thou'st hear our counsel. Thou knowest my daughter's of a pretty age. Faith, I can tell her age unto an hour. 'Tis not 14. I'll lay 14 of my teeth, and yet to my teeth be it spoken, I have but 4. She is not 14. How long is it now to Lammas-tide? Okay, just a quick knowledge note there. Lammas-tide is August the 1st. Okay, it's just a name that they had for that day, like we have Bank Holiday Monday and Boxing Day and so on and so forth. Lammas-tide is the 1st of August. So the nurse is saying, well, how long is it till Lammas-tide? We presume that's when Juliet was born. And Lady Capulet replies, a fortnight and odd days. Okay, now you'll be looking at the nurse about to speak, and you're like, crikey, that is a long speech. So for now, we're going to leave that out. I think it would be way too tedious and boring and slow for me to do it this way. So we'll deal with that speech, the bits of it that are important, when I'm teaching you face-to-face at the front of the classroom. So I want you to pass all of that speech by the nurse, and a little bit extra, and then I want you to find where the nurse then says, peace I have done. So pause me, find peace I have done, and then start me off again, and I'll read you through this next bit of text. Peace I have done. God mark thee to his grace. Thou wast the prettiest babe that e'er I nursed, and I might live to see thee married once. I have my wish. Marry. That marry is the very theme I came to talk of. Tell me, daughter Juliet, how stands your disposition to be married? Okay, the word disposition there just means how do you feel about it? Okay, you're not likely to be writing about it, but just for your knowledge, how do you feel about being married? And Juliet's reply to that is, it is an honour that I dream not of. So we can read this in a few ways. Is she just really not interested in marriage, or because she knows that it's something her parents, particularly her father's going to make the decision for her about who she marries? Perhaps it's not worth dreaming of it because she knows she has no control over that. An honour? Were not I thine only nurse, I would say thou hadst such wisdom from thy teeth. Well, think of marriage now. Younger than you, here in Verona, ladies of esteem are made already mothers. By my count, I was your mother much upon these years, that you are now a maid. Thus then, in brief, the valiant Paris seeks you for his love. A man, young lady, such a man as all the world. Why, he's a man of wax. Okay, don't be confused here. He's not something from Madame Tussauds Museum in London. He's not actually a figure made of wax that they're just going to move about and marry her to. That metaphor there means that he's so good looking and handsome, it's almost like he's been sculpted and crafted from a piece of wax. That is the level of his perfection. Verona's summer hath not such a flower. Nay, he's a flower in faith, a very flower. So again, the Shakespeare's language seems a bit odd to us. They're not saying he's a flower. They're not saying he's a tulip or a rose or a daffodil. What they're saying is he's very attractive. He's very pleasing to the eye. And the final section of this scene 3. What say you? Can you love this gentleman? This night you shall behold him at our feast. So at the party, you can meet him, you can give him the once over, see if you find him attractive. Read o'er the volume of young Paris's face, and find delight writ there with beauty's pen. Examine every married lineament, and see how one another lends content, and what obscured in this fair volume lies, find written in the margent of his eyes. This precious book of love, this unbound lover, to beautify him only lacks a cover. The fish lives in the sea, and 'tis much pride for fair without the fair within to hide. That book in many eyes doth share the glory, that in gold clasps locks in the golden story. So shall you share all that he doth possess, by having him making yourself no less. Ha! No less? Nay, bigger. Women grow by men. Okay, so here's our first example of the nurse being a bit rude and a bit bawdy. So what she's saying here is, or what she's implying, is that a woman who marries may well become bigger because of that man, i.e. she's going to get pregnant and so her stomach will swell. Whether it's an appropriate comment to make to a young girl being asked if she can possibly think about marrying this man, I'm not quite sure. But the nurse is of that level of society where she doesn't have that understanding of what's right and what's wrong. So if she thinks something rude, she just goes on and says it. Speak briefly. Can you like of Paris's love? I'll look to like, if looking liking move, but no more deep will I indart mine eye than your consent gives strength to make it fly. So a servant enters. Madam, the guests are come, supper served up, you called, my young lady asked for. The nurse cursed in the pantry, and everything in extremity. I must hence to wait, I beseech you, follow straight. So the servant arrives and says, come on, folks, the party's starting, people are turning up. Lady Capulet and Juliet are being asked for by Capulet, and the nurse, poor woman, is not allowed to join the party, so she's been cursed in the pantry. She's got to go down and she's got to help get everything ready and keep out of sight. We follow thee. Juliet, the county stays. Go, girl, seek happy nights to happy days. Okay, so there we have it. We have met Juliet. On the next few screens, I'm going to take some of the main quotes from this. I'm going to explode, and I want you to add your notes into your texts, but also into your pink books. Okay, so you've got them twice, and I think that doing them twice, that's really going to strengthen A, your understanding of it, but B, help you with that memory of it, so that it's going to stick in your head, this scene and the things that Lady Capulet says and how she says it to Juliet. Okay, see you on the next slide. Okay, folks, that's it today. I've set you quite a lot today, I've realised. I've just gone through and timed it. So I'm going to make tomorrow's lesson a bit shorter. Okay, so if you haven't quite finished today, or it's taken you longer than your 40-minute lesson, 45-minute lesson, don't worry about it, because your requirement of time for English tomorrow is going to be shorter than the lesson to make up for that. Okay, enjoy the rest of your day. See you tomorrow.